We do want to see a chemistry between him and President Obama, as Straub himself mentioned. We also do want to see some targets set. This is not a meeting in which, as I said, you want expectations of every item on the laundry list to be checked off. But Mr. Modi is setting targets. He is making promises, as he did in Madison Square Garden, to the diaspora. So, for example, when you come back to my area of expertise and you talk about trade, I would like a target to be set. There is a paper that's in Indian think tanks right now talking about taking the trade level to a level of 1 trillion from just the paltry 120 billion it is now by, let's say, the year 2022. I would like to see some targets being set so that there is something we can then begin to watch and monitor from now on.
Yeah. But what about, no, I believe that both of you distinguished gentlemen have not collaborated and that it is a completely coincidental meeting of minds between both of you. I believe you on that, Anand and Straub. Please don't, you don't have to explain that to me, certainly not me. But I am a little bit more impatient than both of you gentlemen. And I actually want to pick on a few troublesome issues, Mr. Talbot, with your permission. You see, and by the way, for all our viewers, I couldn't have got two better names to discuss business and economy and then look at the bigger picture. Is the Indo-US nuclear thing behind us? Mr. Talbot, you know this better than others. Is it now behind us? Can we just leave it behind, first of all? Because things that are not going to happen should not be, time should not be wasted on it. Is it behind us?
I will answer that, but I also want to propose a compromise between myself and Mr. Mahindra and say that perhaps rather than seeing this as a rocket ships flying off into space, let's just say we both agree that we need a more robust wind in the sails of the relationship, because I certainly agree with you that acceleration over time is not only desirable, but I think it's absolutely something that we can achieve. No, I don't think we should leave the nuclear issue behind us. You're talking about the civilian nuclear deal. Yes, there have been obstacles that have arisen on both sides, as we know, but that does not mean that we should abandon that. It was an important implementing step in the overall improvement of the relationship. And civilian nuclear energy is going to be a factor, not a decisive factor, but an important factor in dealing with one of the great threats to a successful 21st century for the human enterprise, and that is dealing with carbon and with climate change. So, and if the United States and India cannot join in being part of the solution to that problem, then there is not going to be a solution to that problem. And nuclear is going to be part of that solution. So we should not give up on that.
Yes, certainly we shouldn't. Mr. Talbot, yes, Mr. Talbot, when Modi was in Japan, he took a jibe at China, speaking out against expansionist attempts in the South China Sea. He didn't take names, but of course that was what he meant. Now, we know that the United States has taken a strong sense of, strong view of China's actions as well. Now, Modi again at the UN General Assembly appeared to take a sort of an indirect jibe at China when he spoke about maritime security in the Asia Pacific. It's there in today's joint editorial in the Washington Post as well, where both of them talk about working towards maritime security. Do you see, with all of this, Mr. Talbot, do you see Narendra Modi leaning strategically towards America vis-a-vis China?
I'd put it a little bit differently. I think what you are noting is absolutely correct in terms of the Prime Minister's position. By the way, not just in Japan, but also in his meetings with President Xi Jinping. And it is a view that he shares with President Barack Obama. We are in a potentially dangerous period where the most populous country on the planet, China, is, as it were, kind of feeling its oats, as we say, and is pounding its chest a bit and making, asserting unilaterally what it regards as historically justified claims to both territory and maritime space that are disputed. There are ways to deal with such disputes, and it's through international law and international tribunals. The wrong way to deal with them is unilateral action. India and its Prime Minister have raised, let's say, a big red flag on that issue, and so has the President of the United States. And I think it's important that in the Washington Post piece that was just released a couple of hours ago, they came together on that. That does not, however, suggest that India and the United States are going to form some kind of strategic alliance against China. That was an idea that was floated back in 2000. Neither the United States nor many of us in the United States, and I think a lot of people in India, were attracted to that idea. What is really important is that the Chinese government and the Indian government work on a bilateral basis to diminish their own issues of contentions, one of which, of course, is a border issue that came up when Prime Minister Modi was in Beijing. And that should be negotiated and dealt with purely through diplomatic means. And that is a principle that President Obama believes in with regard to the Far East. It's an issue. It's a position that he takes with regard to what's happening in Ukraine right now, where military solutions have trumped diplomatic solutions. And I think that is one very important global principle that the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of India will agree on and will help to promote elsewhere in the world.
Well, yes, I think mature nations can have, relationships with each other independent of each other, Mr. Talbot. I think you make a very significant point there in your intervention. Now, Anand, you're in Washington, and I'm sure, you run a large organization which has also interests in all areas, including defense. What kind of technology transfer do you see happening? A. B. How can Indian companies work towards indigenizing our defense production and technology abilities, so that as India becomes a more significant global player on the world stage, over a period of time, we don't just spend billions of dollars outsourcing our technology needs, but can also turn it into a quality homegrown model. Do you see this particular visit and whatever conversations happen today, possibly, Anand, setting the stage for that?
I'm not sure, Arnab, that this visit is going to achieve anything in terms of attacking the major problem, or the major irritant to getting a very robust domestic capability for defense. And let me explain what I mean. We've been laboring away for the last decade at trying to become a major source of indigenous supply to the defense establishment. And the missing link is not FDI in defense. It is not whether or not there's willingness on the part of America to come in and provide the equipment and know-how to the market. After all, India is one of the largest importers in the world. All American organizations that supply defense equipment will want to be there and have expressed an interest in being there. The missing link is that what you need is a very predictable, sustained and transparent mode of procurement by the armed forces. That has been the missing link. So we are looking to the wrong two people. It's not Indian business, it's not America that has to be talked to about this. It is about our armed forces coming out with a very clear agenda, saying this is what we need, giving us the details of what they need. giving us a predictable time schedule, because these are very large investments. They require commitment and technology to be applied to it. And then, frankly, once they tell us this is this is what they need, this is by when they need it, and this is the transparent process of procurement, well, then fine, I promise you, Indian companies and American or whichever other companies want to come in here will step up to bat. So we are looking in the wrong direction to get defense procurement off the ground in India.
Yeah, but you know, I feel there is a certain change of mood, Anand. And while we cannot expect this particular visit to make all that, every aspect, change the whole dynamic overnight, I think people are looking at it keenly because we have some of our own concerns. America has some of its own concerns. What is extremely positive is that both sides are sitting together in a very determined fashion. Mr. Talbot, as when we were reporting this editorial this morning, which was put out a little 25 minutes after 8 o'clock this morning, I'm sure Anand has also seen it, and it's making waves here. One of our analyses was, A, it's significant that as a visiting dignitary, he's written an editorial. It's very well timed. You know, the day he lands in New York, he writes a piece pushing Make in India in the Wall Street Journal. And the day he lands in Washington, ahead of the meeting, there is an editorial co-signed by these two distinguished leaders. Now, Mr. Talbot, would an editorial like that be written, signed and penned by Barack Obama and Modi had there not been a commitment? It's like a public commitment to a strong relationship. I mean, you can have conversations, quiet conversations, but when you write an editorial, you talk about working on counterterrorism, space cooperation, intelligence cooperation, and you also make a very significant point that the relationship has to be bigger than the sum of its parts, which seems to indicate that pinpricks in the relationships will not be allowed to stymie it. I'm sure America and Israel also have occasional trouble in their relationship, but they're not allowed to stymie the long-term relationship. Would you agree, Mr. Talbot, that this public commitment of working together is in itself, in terms of putting it out in editorial itself, a very determined step from both the countries, from New Delhi and Washington, to put it out on paper? I would
unequivocally. I've spent quite a bit of my career in diplomacy and quite a bit of my career in journalism, including the diplomatic beat. There may be a precedent for this, that is to say a joint op-ed, as we call it here in the United States, by the two leaders on the same day that they're meeting. I cannot remember such a thing. It suggests everything that you just said, and it suggests something else, which is that a lot of preparation went into this meeting. And I happen to know that because I'm close to Indian officials, particularly in your embassy, obviously here in Washington, and through Brookings India in Delhi. I've stayed very close to what my colleagues there have told me about preparations for this meeting, and I'm certainly close to the U.S. Department of State and the White House as they prepared for it, and they've taken this meeting very, very seriously. And what's interesting is not only have they taken it seriously, but the Indian side and the American side have found significant points of common interest, which can even be articulated in the same words, to allow them to come out with this rather extraordinary joint op-ed in the Washington Post today.
Yeah, and Mr. Talbot, I saw a recent interview of yours which you gave, where you said that you spoke about the importance of a personal rapport between negotiators. I think you were talking about yourself and Jaswant Singh, and you said that the reason you were able to turn a leaf, and you said that as a writer and as a practitioner of policy, that an awful lot of sort of state-to-state relations really depends on personal relations. You know, you spoke about your rapport with Jaswant Singh. How critical is a personal rapport between Modi and Obama? I think it would be very significant, because after all, the whole denial of visa issue to Modi would be somewhere at the back of even Obama's mind, which is why maybe he would put on more of a charm offensive. Do you think it's very, very, very important to break the ice and build a rapport if this is to go anywhere? There's so much on the plate, but it will boil down to personal dynamics, won't it?
Since you were kind enough to mention Jaswant Singh, please allow me as a point of personal privilege just to say that every single day I think about my friend Jaswant Singh and the travails he's going through and his family is going through, and I pray for them. With regard to the leaders, I've been a student of history pretty much all my career, and I have found countless examples of how a strong personal relationship between two leaders can make possible things that would otherwise be impossible. And the absence of a strong relationship between leaders makes it very, very hard to make progress on really big issues. And I think the fact that this set of meetings today could be a kind of a bonding experience for the two leaders will give all of us even more reason for optimism about the bilateral relationship going forward.
Well, I think we all share your sentiment vis-a-vis Jaswant Singh. Mr. Talbot, distinguished Indian leader, we all pray for him, for your dear friend. And on a lighter note, Anand and Mr. Talbot, I want to know which restaurant you both went to for breakfast before you joined me on this program. I began by saying I believe you agree so much with each other today. I want to know how you set this up this morning. Anand and Strobe, we'll talk later about that. I thank you both very much for adding a very important dimension to our coverage. I've enjoyed talking to both of you. Anand Mahindra and Strobe Talbot for joining me on the run-up to the big meeting. Let's see what happens. Thank you very much, gentlemen.